The crash. The forest was quiet that night, except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the chirping of crickets. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting silver patterns on the ground. Everything seemed calm until the sky suddenly lit up with a streak of green fire. A small spaceship, no bigger than a car, tore through the atmosphere, spinning out of control. Inside, a tiny alien named Zik frantically pressed buttons on his control panel. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the ship shuddered violently. "This can't be how it ends," Zik shouted in his high-pitched voice. He was barely 6 inches tall, but his voice carried the determination of a much larger being. In his homeworld of Clanthar, size meant everything. Zik had spent his whole life trying to prove that even the smallest warrior could be great. But now, it seemed the universe had other plans. The ship crashed into the forest with a deafening boom, breaking branches and scattering animals. When the dust settled, the tiny spacecraft lay in a smoldering crater, half buried in the dirt. Inside, Zik groaned and unbuckled himself from the seat. "I'm alive," he muttered, clutching his head. Barely. He stumbled out of the ship, his metallic suit glinting in the moonlight. Zik's antennas twitched as he scanned his surroundings. Towering trees loomed over him like skyscrapers, and the air was thick with unfamiliar scents. "This planet is enormous," Zik whispered to himself, feeling a pang of fear. Everything around him was gigantic. The trees, the rocks, even the insects. A beetle the size of a dog scuttled past him, making him jump. Zik's pride refused to let him admit he was scared. He puffed out his tiny chest and adjusted the strap of his laser pistol. "I am Zik of Clanthar. The smallest, yes, but also the bravest warrior," he declared, though his voice wavered slightly. As he surveyed the forest, Zik's antennae twitched again. He wasn't alone. Eyes glinted in the shadows, and soft growls filled the air. Several predators, wolf-like creatures with glowing red eyes, emerged from the darkness. Their sharp teeth gleamed as they surrounded the tiny alien. Zik's heart raced. He drew his laser pistol and aimed it at the closest predator. "Back off, you oversized beasts," he yelled, but the wolves didn't flinch. They crept closer, their growls growing louder. Zik fired a warning shot, and the red beam zipped through the air, narrowly missing one of the wolves. The creature snarled and leaped toward him. Zik barely dodged, rolling to the side as the wolf's claws slashed the ground where he'd been standing. "This is bad," Zik muttered, scrambling to his feet. His laser pistol could only hold off so many attackers, and his ship was too damaged to provide any cover. Just as the wolves prepared to pounce, a massive shadow fell over the clearing. The ground shook slightly, and the wolves froze. Zik turned his head, and his jaw dropped. A human, a giant by Zik's standards, stood at the edge of the crater, staring down at the scene. The human was tall, with messy brown hair and curious green eyes. He carried a flashlight in one hand and a strange device in the other. "What in the world?" the human muttered, his voice booming in Zik's ears. Zik felt a surge of both fear and defiance. To him, humans were mindless giants, known throughout the galaxy for their clumsy size and unpredictable behavior. But this human didn't look dangerous, at least, not yet. Still, Zik wasn't taking any chances. He raised his laser pistol, aiming it at the human. "Stay back, giant," he shouted, his tiny voice barely reaching the human's ears. The human blinked and crouched down, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. Whoa, easy there, little guy," he said, his tone calm and non-threatening. "I'm not gonna hurt you." Zik narrowed his eyes. "You expect me to believe that?" The human chuckled softly. "Well, I'm the one who should be scared, don't you think? You've got the laser gun." Zik hesitated. The human wasn't acting like the dangerous creature he'd imagined. Still, he couldn't afford to trust anyone. Not yet. Before he could respond, one of the wolves growled and lunged toward him again. This time, The human reacted faster than Zik could. He swung the strange device in his hand, a metallic tool of some sort, and scared the wolf away. The other wolves backed off, sensing that the human was a threat they couldn't handle. "Looks like you needed some help," the human said, glancing at Zik with a small smile. Zik lowered his pistol slightly, still wary but also begrudgingly impressed. "I didn't need your help," he muttered. "But, thank you." The human grinned. "No problem. My name's Alex, by the way. And you are?" Zik hesitated before replying. "I'm Zik of Klantvar. And don't think this means I trust you, Alex." Alex laughed, his warm voice echoing through the forest. "Fair enough, Zik, but it looks like you're in trouble. Let's get you somewhere safe." Zik wanted to protest, but deep down, he knew Alex was right. For now, he'd have to rely on the human. As Alex gently picked him up and carried him out of the crater, Zik couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. The unlikely rescue. Zik couldn't believe his life had come to this. Perched on the palm of a human, a creature so large it could squash him like a bug. The human's hand was warm and steady, but Zik's pride burned hotter than the shipwreck behind them. "Put me down, giant. I don't need your help," Zik shouted, his tiny voice high-pitched with frustration. He waved his laser pistol for emphasis, but Alex didn't even flinch. "Look, buddy," Alex said, his voice deep and calm. "I just saved you from being a midnight snack for those wolves. A little gratitude wouldn't hurt." Zik huffed, crossing his arms. "Gratitude? I'm a warrior of Klantvar. I don't." His rant was cut off as Alex tripped over a tree root, nearly sending Zik flying. The alien clung to Alex's thumb, his heart pounding. "You were saying?" Alex teased, his green eyes twinkling with amusement. Zik muttered something in his native language that was probably an insult, but Alex just grinned and kept walking. The human's flashlight illuminated the dense forest ahead, revealing strange glowing fungi and rustling bushes. To Zik, it felt like being on another planet altogether, and he hated how small and vulnerable it made him feel. As they walked, Alex glanced down at his tiny passenger. "So, you crash-landed here. What's your plan now?" Zik scowled. "Fix my ship, get off this primitive planet, and return to my people." "Aha," Alex said, stepping over another root. "And how exactly are you going to fix your ship when it's, in pieces?" Zik froze. He didn't have an answer. His ship was badly damaged, and his toolkit was too small to handle the repairs. He had been so focused on survival that he hadn't thought that far ahead. Alex noticed the silence and smirked. "Thought so. Lucky for you, I'm pretty good with fixing stuff. What do you say we call it even? I help you fix your ship, and you stop calling me a giant." Before Zik could reply, his antennas twitched. A strange noise, a low hum, reverberated through the air. His instincts screamed danger. "Wait," Zik hissed. "Stop walking." Alex paused, his expression serious. "What is it?" "Something's following us," Zik whispered, scanning the trees with his sharp eyes. "Something, not human." Alex tightened his grip on the flashlight, his muscles tensing. "Not human. Like you?" "No," Zik said, his voice barely audible. "Worse." The hum grew louder, accompanied by the faint crunch of footsteps on leaves. Suddenly, a bright blue light shone through the trees, bathing the forest in an eerie glow. "Hide," Zik shouted. Alex darted behind a large boulder, crouching low as Zik scrambled up to his shoulder. The blue light swept over the area, and a shadowy figure stepped into view. It was tall and insect-like, with multiple limbs and glowing eyes. "Bounty hunters," Zik whispered, his voice trembling. "They'd come for me." Alex's jaw tightened. "Why are they after you?" Zik hesitated. "It's complicated." The bounty hunter raised a strange device, scanning the area. Alex's flashlight must have left a trail, because the hunter turned directly toward their hiding spot. Alex glanced at Zik. "Any brilliant ideas, warrior?" Zik gritted his teeth. "Run. A world of giants." Zik stared in disbelief at the human's home. It was a massive structure, at least to him, made of mismatched metal panels, glass windows, and towering shelves stacked with odd contraptions. To Zik, it looked like a cluttered fortress designed by a mad inventor. This is where you live?" Zik asked, his antennas twitching in disbelief. Alex grinned, setting his backpack down on a large wooden workbench. "Yeah, welcome to my workshop. Don't mind the mess." "Mess?" Zik squeaked, flinching as a stack of wires tumbled off a nearby shelf. "This is chaos. How do you even survive in here without getting crushed by your own inventions?" Alex chuckled and shrugged. "It's an organized kind of chaos. Everything here has a purpose. Trust me." Zik climbed down from Alex's shoulder onto the workbench, carefully avoiding a rusty screwdriver. From his vantage point, everything was oversized. The tools, the machines, even the bolts. To a human, it might have been a workshop. To Zik, it was a maze of hazards. As Alex rummaged through a drawer, Zik muttered under his breath, "Giant tools, giant furniture. Everything on this planet is giant. It's ridiculous." Alex looked over his shoulder. "Hey, you're the one who crash-landed here, little guy." "Not my fault. Earth isn't built for someone your size." Zik scowled but didn't respond. Instead, he wandered across the workbench, examining the strange objects scattered around. A half-assembled robot caught his attention, its sleek design reminding him of the drones on his homeworld. But the technology here was primitive compared to what Zik was used to. "You call this a machine?" he muttered, poking the robot's exposed circuitry. "It's like something a child would build." "Careful," Alex warned without looking up. "That's my prototype. It's sensitive." Zik rolled his eyes. "Sensitive? It looks like it's held together with chewing gum." As if to prove him wrong, the robot's single glowing eye flickered to life. Zik jumped back as the machine emitted a loud beep, its arm jerking upward. "See, alive and kicking," Alex said, smirking as he walked over. He tapped a few buttons on a nearby console, and the robot's movements calmed. "Give it a few more tweaks, and it'll be my new assistant." "Assistant? More like a walking scrap heap," Zik muttered. But despite his criticism, he couldn't deny he was impressed. For a human, Alex was surprisingly resourceful. Before Zik could inspect the robot further, his antennae twitched. He froze, sensing something outside the workshop. A faint vibration ran through the air, almost imperceptible but familiar. "What is it?" Alex asked, noticing Zik's sudden tension. Zik didn't answer immediately. He climbed to the edge of the workbench and peered out the window. His sharp eyes scanned the forest, and then he saw it, a faint glimmer of blue light in the distance, moving closer. "They found me," Zik whispered, his voice filled with dread. Alex frowned. "Who's they?" "Bounty hunters," Zik said, turning to face Alex. "They're after me. And if they find me here, they'll come for you too." Alex's jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. "Then we'd better make sure they don't find us." Zik raised an eyebrow. "We? What do you mean we?" "This is my problem. Human." "Maybe," Alex said, grabbing a strange device from the shelf. "But you're in my workshop now. And if they're coming here, it's my fight too." Zik opened his mouth to protest, but Alex was already moving. He flipped a switch on the device, and a low hum filled the room. A shimmering shield of light appeared at the windows, forming a protective barrier around the building. Zik's eyes widened. You have force field technology." "Sort of," Alex said, adjusting the settings. "It's more of an energy deterrent. Won't hold them off for long, but it'll buy us time." Zik was stunned. For a species Zik had dismissed as primitive, humans were proving to be far more resourceful than he'd imagined, but time wasn't on their side. Outside, The blue light grew brighter, and the sound of crunching leaves grew louder. The bounty hunters were closing in. Zik clenched his fists. If they break through, we're both done for. Alex looked at him, a determined glint in his eyes. Then we make sure they don't. You're not alone in this, Zik. For the first time, Zik felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt since crashing on Earth. Hope. The attack. The silence in the workshop was deafening. Outside, the hum of the bounty hunters' scanning devices echoed faintly, sending shivers down Zik's spine. The blue glow of their searchlights pierced through the cracks in the windows, casting eerie shadows across the cluttered room. "They're here," Zik whispered, gripping his tiny laser pistol tightly. His antennae twitched as the vibrations in the air grew stronger. Alex stood by the door, holding a makeshift weapon, a long metal pipe rigged with wires, and a sparking energy coil. He glanced at Zik, his jaw set with determination. "All right, Zik, what are we dealing with here? Big, ugly, and alien, I'm guessing." Zik shot him an exasperated look. "They're not just big and ugly. They're professionals. They're trackers, hunters, and killers. And they don't leave witnesses." "Great," Alex muttered. "Sounds like the perfect company for a late-night visit." Before Zik could respond, a sharp crack echoed outside as something struck the energy barrier Alex had set up. The shield flickered, its light dimming momentarily. Zik's heart sank. "They're testing your defenses," Zik said grimly. "Your primitive barrier won't hold for long." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Primitive? You're welcome, by the way. I didn't see you whipping up a force field in 5 minutes." Zik opened his mouth to retort but was interrupted by a deafening boom. The shield shattered like glass, and the workshop plunged into darkness as the power cut out. "Lights out," Alex muttered under his breath, grabbing a flashlight and flicking it on. A low growl echoed from outside the workshop. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps, multiple sets, slow and deliberate. Zik could feel the weight of their approach, each step vibrating through the floor. "They're inside the perimeter," Zik whispered, his voice trembling despite his attempt to sound brave. Alex nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. "All right, warrior. Any bright ideas?" Zik hesitated. He had faced many challenges before, but this was different. He wasn't used to relying on someone else, especially not a human. Yet here he was, standing on the edge of survival with a giant who refused to back down. "Divide and distract," Zik finally said, his voice steadier. "They'll expect resistance, but they won't expect us to fight smart." Alex smirked. "Smart? Ha. All right. You've got the brain power. I've got the brawn. Let's make it work." Suddenly, the door burst open, and a tall, insect-like bounty hunter stepped inside. Its glowing blue eyes scanned the room, locking onto Alex. It raised a jagged weapon, but before it could fire, Zik sprang into action. "Hey, Overveer," Zik shouted, leaping onto a nearby shelf and firing his laser pistol. The red beam struck the bounty hunter's shoulder, drawing its attention away from Alex. The alien snarled, swinging its weapon toward Zik, but Alex seized the opportunity. With a battle cry, he lunged forward, slamming his makeshift weapon into the bounty hunter's side. Sparks flew as the alien stumbled back, hissing in pain. "That's one down," Alex said, breathing heavily. "How many more are out there?" Zik's antennas twitched. "At least 3. Maybe more." As if on cue, another bounty hunter smashed through the window, its claws glinting in the moonlight. Alex and Zik barely had time to react before 2 more figures appeared at the doorway, surrounding them. "Well," Alex said, glancing at Zik, "this just got interesting." "Interesting," Zik snapped, diving behind a toolbox to avoid a stray shot. "This is a death trap." Alex grinned, his adrenaline pumping. "Relax, little guy. We've got this." Zik peeked out from his hiding spot, watching in disbelief as Alex faced the attackers head-on. The human moved with surprising agility, using the workshop's clutter to his advantage. He knocked over shelves, swung tools like weapons, and even used a can of pressurized gas as an improvised smoke bomb. For a moment, Zick forgot his fear. He had always believed humans were clumsy giants, but Alex was proving him wrong. The human wasn't just brave, he was resourceful. "Zick," Alex called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Now would be a great time to use that fancy alien tech of yours." Snapping out of his daze, Zick nodded and activated a small device on his belt. A holographic decoy of himself appeared in the center of the room, confusing the bounty hunters. They hesitated, unsure which target to attack. "That's more like it," Alex said, using the distraction to strike another bounty hunter, sending it crashing to the floor. The room erupted into chaos as the bounty hunters tried to regroup. But between Alex's unorthodox tactics and Zick's clever gadgets, the tide began to turn. For the first time, Zick felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. The escape. Zick was running out of time and options. The workshop was in ruins. Sparks flew from shattered machines, tools were scattered across the floor, and smoke curled through the air. The bounty hunters were relentless, their glowing blue eyes cutting through the haze like searchlights. Every step they took felt like thunder to Zick's tiny frame, shaking the ground beneath him. "This way," Alex shouted, waving Zick toward a hidden hatch in the floor. He had already pried it open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading into the forest. Zick hesitated, glancing back at the bounty hunters closing in. His instincts screamed to stand and fight, but logic won out. "You're lucky I'm desperate," he yelled, darting toward Alex. As soon as Zick reached him, Alex grabbed the tiny alien and tucked him into his jacket pocket. "Hang tight, little guy," Alex said, sliding into the tunnel. The hatch slammed shut behind them just as a burst of blue plasma scorched the air where they had been. The tunnel was dark and cramped, but Alex moved quickly, his flashlight beam bouncing off the damp walls. Zick peeked out from the pocket, his antennas twitching nervously. "What is this place?" Zick asked, his voice muffled. "An old escape route," Alex replied, his voice calm despite the chaos above. "I built it just in case one of my inventions went haywire. Didn't think I'd be using it to dodge alien bounty hunters." Zick scowled. "Your species is insane." Alex chuckled. "And yet, here we are." The sound of metal scraping above made Zick's blood run cold. The bounty hunters had found the hatch and were prying it open. Their guttural growls echoed down the tunnel, and Zick's antennas twitched in panic. "They're coming," Zick said, gripping the edge of Alex's pocket. "Faster than you think." "I know," Alex muttered, increasing his pace, "but they don't know this tunnel like I do." The tunnel began to slope downward, leading into a series of branching paths. Alex paused at an intersection, catching his breath. "All right, which way, genius? Left or right?" Zick climbed out of the pocket and scanned the air, his antennas vibrating faintly. "Right, the airflow is stronger that way. It leads outside." "You sure?" Alex asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yes, I'm sure," Zick snapped. "Now move before they catch us." Alex didn't argue. He took the right path, ducking to avoid a low-hanging pipe. The tunnel grew narrower, forcing Alex to crouch, but Zick's confidence gave him a sliver of hope. Behind them, the scraping and growling grew louder. The bounty hunters were relentless, their advanced tracking equipment honing in on Zick's unique energy signature. "They're too fast," Zick said, glancing over his shoulder. "They'll catch us before we reach the exit." "Not if we make them slower," Alex replied, pulling a small device from his belt. It looked like a grenade but was covered in wires and blinking lights. Zick's eyes widened. "Is that a—" "Yep," Alex said, tossing it behind them without breaking stride. The device beeped twice before detonating, flooding the tunnel with a blinding flash of light and an ear-splitting boom. The walls trembled and debris rained down, blocking the path behind them. The bounty hunter's growls turned into frustrated roars. "Primitive species, huh?" Alex quipped, smirking at Zik. Zik grumbled but couldn't hide his grudging admiration. "Fine. You're not completely useless." The tunnel finally opened into a wide cavern, its ceiling glittering with bioluminescent fungi. A cool breeze flowed through the space, leading to an opening on the far side. They were almost free. But as they approached the exit, a shadow fell across the cavern. One of the bounty hunters, a hulking insect-like creature, stood blocking their path, its weapon raised. Alex froze. So much for the easy way out. Zik climbed onto Alex's shoulder, his laser pistol at the ready. "If we go down fighting." Alex glanced at him and smiled. "I like the way you think." The bounty hunter charged, its claws sparking against the cavern floor. Zik and Alex moved as one. Zik firing precise laser shots to distract the alien while Alex swung a metal rod, aiming for its weak points. The fight was chaotic, the cavern echoing with blasts and roars. But Zik and Alex's teamwork paid off. With a final, well-placed blow, Alex knocked the bounty hunter off balance, sending it tumbling into a deep crevice. For a moment, silence returned. The only sound was their labored breathing. "Is it over?" Zik asked, his voice cautious. "For now," Alex replied, stepping toward the exit. "But we got to keep moving. They'll send more." As they emerged into the moonlit forest, Zik glanced up at Alex. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for survival, but for something more. "Thanks," Zik said quietly. Alex smiled. "Don't mention it, little guy. We're not out of the woods yet." And with that, they disappeared into the night, the forest closing behind them. The stand. The abandoned factory loomed in the distance, its skeletal frame barely visible through the thick mist. Rusted beams jutted out like broken bones, and the air smelled of metal and decay. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and Zik knew it. "They'll come for us here," Zik said, standing on Alex's shoulder. His tiny hands gripped a makeshift weapon Alex had fashioned for him, a miniature crossbow rigged from human tools. "This is where we make our stand." Alex glanced down at him, his face smeared with dirt and determination. "You sure about this? We could still run." "No," Zik replied firmly. "If we run, they'll keep chasing us. If we fight here, we have the advantage." He hesitated before adding, "And I'm done running." Alex gave him a nod of approval. "All right, little warrior, let's do this." They slipped into the factory, the echo of their footsteps swallowed by the cavernous space. Broken machinery lay scattered across the floor, and shafts of moonlight cut through the broken windows, casting eerie shadows. Alex set his backpack down and began rigging traps with wires, explosives, and whatever scrap he could find. Zik climbed onto a nearby ledge, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness. "We need to split them up," he said. "They're stronger together." "Got it," Alex said, setting a tripwire near the main entrance. "But they've got numbers and weapons. What have we got?" "Brains," Zik replied with a smirk. "And courage." Before Alex could respond, a low hum filled the air, followed by the crunch of heavy footsteps. Zik's antennas twitched. "They're here." Alex stood, gripping a metal pipe in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Showtime. The bounty hunters didn't bother with stealth. They marched through the factory's main entrance, their glowing blue eyes cutting through the shadows. There were 5 of them now, taller, more heavily armed, and more dangerous than before. The leader stepped forward, its insect-like limbs clicking as it scanned the room. "Zik of Clanthar," the leader said, its voice a deep guttural growl. "Surrender, and we will spare the human." Zik stepped out of the shadows, his small frame dwarfed by the towering aliens. He stood on a high beam, his voice steady. "You think I'd trust your word? Come and get me." The bounty hunters roared in response, scattering to surround him. But Zik was already moving. With a leap, he activated a small jet pack on his back, soaring to another beam. As he flew, he fired his laser pistol, hitting one of the bounty hunters in the arm. The alien stumbled, triggering Alex's tripwire. A loud explosion echoed through the factory as a makeshift grenade detonated, taking the bounty hunter out of the fight. One down. Alex called out, his grin fierce. The remaining bounty hunters split up, some chasing Zik while others turned their attention to Alex. One charged at him, its claws slashing through the air. Alex ducked and swung his metal pipe, landing a solid hit on the alien's leg. It roared in pain, but before it could recover, Alex threw a smoke bomb, disappearing into the mist. Meanwhile, Zik used his small size to his advantage, darting through gaps and climbing to higher ground. He led the bounty hunters into one of Alex's traps, a hidden snare that sent another alien crashing into a pile of rusted machinery. Zik smirked. Maybe humans aren't as primitive as I thought. As the fight raged on, the bounty hunter leader grew more furious. It smashed through Alex's traps with brute force, its glowing eyes locked on Zik. "You cannot win," it growled, leaping onto the beam where Zik stood. Zik didn't flinch. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his voice firm. "You're wrong. Size doesn't matter. Heart does." The alien lunged, but Zik was ready. He dodged at the last second, sliding under the creature's legs and firing his laser pistol at the beam's support. The structure groaned, and with a deafening crash, the bounty hunter fell into the rubble below. Alex emerged from the mist, panting but victorious. "How's that for teamwork?" he said, giving Zik a thumbs up. Zik climbed down and joined him, his small chest heaving with pride. "Not bad, giant. Not bad at all." But their celebration was short-lived. A faint hum echoed in the distance, reinforcements. Zik looked at Alex, his determination returning. "This isn't over." Alex nodded, his grin unwavering. "Good. I'm just getting started." The triumph. The battlefield was silent, save for the distant hum of dying machinery and the soft crackle of embers. Zik stood atop a pile of rubble, his tiny figure illuminated by the faint glow of the rising sun. His laser pistol hung loosely in his hand, the energy depleted. Around him lay the defeated bounty hunters, their weapons scattered and their leader buried beneath the wreckage of the factory. "We did it," Zik whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of his own heartbeat. His antennae twitched, scanning the horizon for any remaining threats. There were none. Alex stumbled out of the shadows, bruised and battered but alive. His once pristine jacket was torn, and a thin line of blood trickled down his cheek. Despite his injuries, a broad grin spread across his face as he approached Zik. "Not bad for a guy your size," Alex said, his voice hoarse but filled with pride. Zik turned to him, his usual sharp retorts replaced by a rare moment of sincerity. "Not bad for a giant." Alex chuckled, wincing slightly as he adjusted his makeshift weapon. "So, what's next, little warrior? Heading back to your people as a hero?" Zik hesitated, glancing at the horizon where the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. For so long he had dreamed of proving his worth to his people. He had wanted to show them that size didn't define strength, that even the smallest warrior could make a difference. But now, as he stood beside Alex, he realized that his journey had become about more than just proving himself. It had become about the bonds he had forged, the lessons he had learned, and the realization that true strength wasn't about fighting alone. It was about fighting together. "Maybe," Zik said, his voice thoughtful. "But not yet. There's still so much I need to learn." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Learn? From me?" Zik smirked. "Don't let it go to your head, human. You're still a primitive species, but you've got potential." Before Alex could respond, a high-pitched beeping sound interrupted the moment. Zik's antennas perked up, and he pulled a small device from his belt. The holographic screen flickered to life, displaying a series of alien symbols. "What is it?" Alex asked, peering over Zig's shoulder. Zig's expression darkened. "It's a distress signal from my homeworld." Alex's brow furrowed. "A distress signal? What kind of trouble are they in?" Zig's fingers hovered over the device, deciphering the message. "It's worse than I thought. The bounty hunters weren't just after me. They were part of something bigger, a larger force targeting my planet." Alex's grin faded, replaced by a look of determination. "Then we can't waste time. Let's get moving." Zig looked up at him, his tiny face filled with both gratitude and resolve. "You don't have to come with me, Alex. This isn't your fight." Alex smirked and slung his weapon over his shoulder. "Zig, after everything we've been through, you think I'm just going to sit this one out? Besides, someone's got to keep you out of trouble." For the first time, Zig laughed. A genuine, unrestrained laugh. "You're a strange giant, Alex." "And you're a pretty fearless little guy," Alex replied, offering his hand. "Partners." Zig hesitated for only a moment before clasping Alex's finger with his tiny hand. "Partners." As they turned toward the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, a faint rumble shook the ground beneath them. In the distance, the silhouette of an enormous ship loomed in the sky, its engines glowing ominously. Zig and Alex exchanged a glance. "Looks like the next adventure starts sooner than we thought," Alex said, his grin returning. Zig nodded, his antennae twitching with anticipation. "Let's make it count." And together, they marched toward the rising sun, ready to take on the universe, one battle at a time.